Good morning, team. Happy Friday. Welcome back to the Just Fuel Show. I'm always very excited to be learning from Dr. Mike, but I'm also very excited about this topic because it's all about inflammation, something I feel like at the ripe old age of 35, I really need to start paying attention to. So as always, these end up being conversations that I really benefit from. But hopefully you all will get some good info from him as well. Good morning, team. Good morning.
What's going on?
I apologize if it's really echoey in here.
You do have an echo, or are you in a coliseum?
It is. It is a call. No. It's my new house, so there's no furniture in it. So
I was just going to say, did you find you're not couch surfing anymore?
I'm not couch surfing 7 months later.
Oh my God, that's what's up.
Yeah, but there's literally, I'll show you real quick. There's literally nothing in the house except for a refrigerator and a microwave.
I was saying you got a microwave.
Yeah. Oh, so I moved in and I was like, I need a microwave. And as soon as my refrigerator's in, I'm living here no matter what's happening. So anyways, I apologize
awesome
for the echo, but there's nothing I can really do about it.
All good.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good.
I got
doing very well.
Comments off. I'm getting distracted. Sorry, team. Okay. First, everybody tuning in, I was like, hey, Dr. Mike, okay, so we're going to talk about inflammation. Do you think you could send me over some info? And he was like, yeah, I'll send you over all the info for my new book I'm writing. I was like, hey, mic drop. So what's this?
Yeah, I'm working on, kind of two simultaneous nutrition certifications. And what I had sent you was, so I'm writing like 4 textbooks at the moment. And the one I had sent you was for a certification about functional nutrition. Like how do we use, a little bit more towards like the functional medicine side of things, like understanding what is going on in our bodies and then how nutrition with supplemental lifestyle can really support that. And so one of the key pillars of that is inflammation and really understanding what is inflammation, how does it affect our bodies, and what can we do nutritionally to optimize that.
I am really excited about this conversation. Also, just because I feel like, I think there must be staple ages that things change in your body, and 35 is one of them. Like, I know we all went through a pandemic, and I know there's lots of reasons for like stress and like body reacting a certain way, but I just feel like 35 she hit me really hard. So inflammation is something I'm super excited to just learn more about, and also just to kind of see what I can do to switch things up or add things to, like my diet, my routine to help out with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think inflammation is very interesting. It's really actually one of the reasons, it was one of the driving factors for me to get into nutrition. Like I was extremely interested in how inflammation would be the root cause of chronic disease and a lot of the problems that, face people from a health perspective. And when I first got into nutrition, I was very into the science behind omega-3 fatty acids, like omega-3 fats and how they impact inflammation. And that, it's a core passion of mine, is really understanding this inflammation piece.
I love it. So can we start from the very basics and just like, what is inflammation?
Yeah. So I think what's probably very surprising to people is inflammation is actually something that your body does to itself. So inflammation is basically a process that your body goes through to protect itself and to repair itself. And why I think this is surprising to people is we generally think of inflammation as bad, right? And part of that is when inflammation is talked about, it's talked about as chronic inflammation. So inflammation that's ongoing over a long period of time. So, heart disease, many people say, well, inflammation is the root cause of heart disease. And this would be elevated inflammation for months and years, et cetera. But inflammation, you think, like this. So I dropped a rock on my hand the other day. And so my finger swelled up. And that's like a natural, that's what your body is supposed to do, right? So the swelling, redness, heat. So basically what happens is your immune system goes in and it nukes everything to try to kill bacteria or whatever that is. Inflammation also leads to increase in blood flow. That's why you get that warmth. So redness and warmth are two of the cardinal signs of inflammation. And that's why you get that, because there more fluids are going there. There's more blood flow. Your body's trying to say, okay, let's level set everything, and then let's start repairing. And so in that case, so that's called acute, like, or short-term or immediate inflammation. And oftentimes, I mean, that if you didn't have that, your body would be in a lot of trouble. You know, and I think on the flip side, you know, we talk about chronic inflammation. You think a lot of people that go because of health reasons will have to go on long-term steroid treatments. You know, like corticosteroids for long-term, like whether it's because they had like an organ transplant, or they have some medical condition, and so they have to go on corticosteroids for a while. What that does is it basically totally dampers your body's inflammatory response. And, you know, those people have all kinds of health problems because their body has no inflammatory response. So one of the things that I really want people to get from our discussion is that this is truly about balance. How do we find that balance between pro-inflammation, which is like, you know, stimulating inflammation, and anti-inflammation? And now we're generally hyper anti-inflammation from a health perspective, because most of the things in our life, in modern life, promote an inflammatory response. You know, like eating too much food, sitting around, being stressed, not sleeping enough, like all those things elicit long-term inflammatory responses, or those chronic inflammatory responses. So when people talk about something like an anti-inflammatory diet, we're just trying to, like, you know, it's like throwing sandbags against the levee. Like, we're trying to hold it back. But we don't really want to eradicate inflammation.
Okay, you're going too fast. I can't take all these notes. So what I want to know is, because I think one of the things when I was reading through is, like, it's really important for us to understand there's, you know, like, inflammation is good. It does its part, its process to kind of like take care of the issue at hand. And that I understood. I loved your analogy of the fire, like the fire truck. So basically Dr. Mike was saying, like, if you drop the rock on your hand and then you get annoyed that it's red and it's swollen, it's hurt. That's like being annoyed that fire trucks make noise on the way to the fire. Like, it's doing its job. I love that. I was like, brilliant. But it's helpful for somebody like me. I'm just like trying to understand. Like, I love those analogies. I think what I am more like interested in learning about is like what are the things that lead to chronic inflammation? So, like, what are those things? And then how can we kind of like start working towards eliminating those things?
Yep. So from a chronic inflammation standpoint, the big offenders are kind of like when we talked about stress, like the big offenders for stress. The big offenders for chronic inflammation are sedentary life, right? So poor diet that can lead to excessive weight gain, lack of sleep, and chronic stress. So those are kind of those are really the four big ones. And they each stimulate inflammation in a different way. And so I think one of the, you know, what's really cool, like what's so cool about nutrition in the human body is that for people who are tuning in, they're like, well, this is the same stuff we always talk about, right? And so the good news is, if you do the same stuff we always talk about, like you knock out stress, you knock out inflammation, you boost your insulin sensitivity, you know, you like do all the things. So that's what's really cool about the body and a healthy living, is if you do those things, then all of a sudden it sets you up for success on multiple fronts.
I love this. And also the thing is, which goes with what we're always talking about, like, you have to figure out what's doable. Nobody's living a perfect life. Nobody's a fucking perfect human being. It's not happening. But I'm looking at this and I realize, so for me, a pattern when I'm really, really stressed, which is a lot, I know that like one of the best things I can do for myself is make sure that I sleep. It's the opposite of what I want to do because I'm stressed mostly because, you know, work and I'm behind and I got to get stuff going. So I don't want to sleep, but I like that one is a really important one for us to note because, you know, especially with the culture of like sleep is for the weak. I can sleep when I'm dead. Like changing sleep has been one of the most beneficial things that I've done for my body. I think that's been like one of the biggest game changers. So we manage the things that we can manage.
Right. And I think nutrition is the wild card in that scenario, because you're thinking maybe I can't sleep as much as I'd like to. Maybe I'm stressed because I got all these different things going on. Like I'm not able to not be stressed, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe I don't get to move as much, you know, like my deliberate exercise isn't as frequently as I like. But you always have exercise, you always have nutrition, right? And so what you can do from a nutrition standpoint is, you know, eating a reasonable amount of food based on your energy output, or even a little bit less, can help stimulate these anti-inflammatory processes in your body. And then the foods that you pick, like simple stuff, like extra virgin olive oil is, I think it's one of the best foods because it is so loaded with antioxidants, right? And it's required to cook anything delicious, right? You need a little fat, a little bit of oil. Extra virgin olive oil is great. You think like berries, raspberries, blueberries, etc., loaded with antioxidants. Nuts and seeds. So foods like pistachios have like 4 different classes of antioxidants. And so
Your
all these
favorite nut. You always are trying to rep them.
You know, they're my favorite nut.
I love them.
And so when you look at these, like green tea is another one. So kind of the beverages, tea, the beverage, coffee, those things, all these antioxidant rich foods that can help support our body's fight of inflammation.
Okay.
You know, green vegetables, we talked at the beginning, omega-3 fats, so the fats you find in fish, or if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you can get like a DHA supplement that's an algae-based omega-3 fatty acid. What basically those do is they provide the molecular building blocks for your body to create anti-inflammatory compounds. So you're like literally giving them and like I was like in graduate school, I was like super nerd. Like I took a whole class dedicated to these things they're called eicosanoids and prostaglandins. And, so this is like so wild. So the guy who taught the class, right, he was super genius and he got his Ph.D. in India. And venomous snakes have one of these prostaglandins, one of these like pro-inflammatory compounds in them. So they used to go outside the lab, catch snakes, and milk them for their venom in order to get the prostaglandins they needed to run the reactions for his thesis work.
Gosh, what a story.
So, you know, but so it's those basic things like people, I think, overlook omega-3 fatty acids a lot, partly because they've been kind of a health darling for a long time. But it's such a core piece to your overall kind of fighting and controlling inflammation. Okay. And that it's also like we always talk about, it's like, what can you do consistently? So when we're looking at how do we fight chronic inflammation, it's those daily behaviors that we can do consistently over time. So then what's really cool is if you can do this to help control inflammation in your body, things start to work better. So when with the study that I ran for my PhD thesis, we're looking at a bunch of different heart healthy diets, and we measured people's baseline levels of inflammation. And what we found was people who had lower levels of inflammation at the beginning of the study, their bodies were more responsive to the health benefits of the diet than those who had higher levels of baseline inflammation.
Random question, but how are you actually going in and like measuring inflammation?
So we used a measure called high sensitivity C-reactive protein, which is...
This is coffee, not anything interesting.
Sure. I'm gonna just pull out a solo cup on a Friday afternoon.
I know, I'm so sorry.
I swear it's coffee.
You are also being propped up by a bottle of Hennessy right now because I'm not kidding you. You're literally being propped up by a bottle of Hennessy because I have no tripod here. Like we're just making.
I've never been propped up by some Hennessy, so I appreciate that. I've had to been propped up after having Hennessy, but I've never been propped up.
I apologize for the intermission. Okay, I'm so sorry, Dr. Like. So speaking of inflammation, God, isn't alcohol like the worst?
It does. It can, especially in your liver.
Yeah.
But it's in moderation.
Okay.
Just alcohol consumption and mortality. It's a J-shaped curve. You just got to kind of get the middle is the sweet spot to optimize it.
That's another conversation. Oh my gosh, we're so off topic. Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, we were talking about measuring inflammation. So you can measure like all kinds of. So we measured C-reactive protein, which is like it's like a general overall marker for inflammation. We measured a variety of other ones like NF kappa B, TNF alpha. Like it's like it's like a vegetable alphabet soup. It's like an alphabet soup, right? There's a million that you could measure.
Okay.
And so we just measured kind of like this core basic one in your blood. And we were the third study to show this, that if you have lower levels of baseline inflammation, your body's more responsive to heart healthy diets. And so I think it's safe to apply that to, not just heart healthy diets, but kind of other things too. So yeah, so setting yourself up to, kind of have optimal levels of inflammation is really important. It's kind of like the rich get richer if you can get yourself in that situation. And, I think to, like you said, and we've talked about this a lot too, kind of the seasons of life that you go through, and just understanding, like, if this is a time where, it's like generally stress and inflammation kind of run parallel together, they're on the same team. And so if this is a time when you are stressed and like you're going to have more, you just feel like it's a situation where you have more inflammation, then really doubling down nutritionally to be better, to get more of those antioxidant-rich foods, to get more of the omega-3 fatty acids, to maybe just control total calorie intake a little bit, that if you can do that, it's going to further support your efforts.
Wow. So do you want to talk anything more about that, or can we move on a little bit?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I am really interested in exercise causing inflammation, and like how managing that, like, because there's obviously a balance then of making sure that you're moving, but also then taking care of yourself, and like, what are maybe, for those of us that are moving a lot, like, and stressing out the body a lot and having an inflammatory response, what should we be paying attention to?
Yeah. So I think this is like one of the more fascinating, like, aspects of nutrition and inflammation. And, now that we've talked about acute inflammation, chronic inflammation, this is like the perfect, so you sequence this really well, Kaisa.
It was not.
And so basically inflammation or exercise is an inflammatory activity.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like you don't build muscle when you're exercising. Like if you were to analyze somebody at the end of a workout, you would probably say metabolically, you'd be like, why are we doing this? This person is like trashed, right? But part of what exercise is breaking things down, right? Going beyond what your body's capable of. And then it feeds forward and improves itself. It recovers, it repairs, then you get better the next time and subsequent. So I remember this is also when I was in graduate school, I was at a talk in the food science building, and this guy started talking about how vitamin E and vitamin C supplementation after exercise reduced insulin sensitivity. So basically your body, like supplementing, bless you, with vitamin E or C reduced your body's ability to use and process carbohydrates, right? So to like 27-year-old meathead Mike, right, studying to get his Ph.D., I'm like mortified because after my workout, I was like vitamin C, vitamin E, the antioxidants, like, I had everything dialed in bodybuilder style. And I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And because basically what is going on is there is this inflammatory response, and part of muscle growth and part of getting fitter is your body saying, okay, here's the inflammatory response. Now let's fight back, right? Let's normalize it. It's in the recovery that you get better. So if you start layering on top of your activity, all this additional antioxidant support, your body doesn't have to fight back and get better. It's like if you do your kids' homework, they don't get any smarter, right?
Yo, yeah.
So it's the same thing with antioxidants and exercise. So generally what I'll do is I'll withhold supplemental antioxidants. Like I'm not going to say, like I'll still have blueberries with my smoothie if I have a post-workout shake, something like that. But I won't go with like supplemental antioxidants right after exercise because I want my body's own natural process to say, here's inflammation. Now we're going to fight back. Now we're better and stronger.
What is that? Is that several hours? Is that a day? Like what is that?
So this is like total speculation, but I like 6 hours. I give it like a little, like 4 to 6 hours seems to be physiologically like a good post-workout window. But so you see this in other cases. So you see studies showing like ibuprofen use after exercise can reduce muscle growth over time. Same thing, because basically ibuprofen just gets right at inflammation. So things like fish oil, curcumin, high antioxidant supplements, like a greens or reds powder, something like that, I don't do right after exercise. I do it at a different time during the day.
That is so fascinating.
So there's one other wrinkle to it, right? And I got to this working with professional athletes who are like, because they train like all the time. It's like all train, all stress. Because sometimes your goal isn't necessarily to get better. Your goal is to get through, right? So if and I'll just use the athlete example. Like if you're an athlete, it's the middle of your season. You're not necessarily worried about how can I gain an extra 2 pounds of muscle. You're like, how can I just be at my best for the next game?
Yeah.
So in that case, what we do is we call in, that's when you can call in this additional antioxidant supplemental support to fight this overall stress and inflammation that a person's going through. So you'll see like people, like I'm sure you've seen this, is like overtraining, right? When people head down this path of overtraining, and that's when sometimes you want to come in and say, well, what can we do nutritionally to help with supplemental antioxidants to help fight this inflammatory response? So I started doing this, God, it was maybe like 10 years ago. It was 5 grams of creatine, like a scoop of a greens powder, and a serving of amino acids. So about 7 to 10 grams of amino acids, 5 times a day for 3 days. And it literally has always worked to get somebody back on track. So somebody who's like, feel like they're on the brink of overtraining, and it's just kind of like, creatine is like a cell hydrator as well. So you just hit them with, basically it's amino acids, it's high potency antioxidants, hyperhydration in the cell, and it consistently works. I used it in the NBA a ton, and I used it, with other powerlifters, like leading up to preventing overtraining. And they
be a supplement from you coming soon, like.
But it's just that, so basically that protocol of saying, well, let's call in this additional antioxidant support, and it's not something you would do all the time, but for like this 2 to 3 day period, it could really get you back on track if you can't afford to fall down the rabbit hole of overtraining.
Yeah.
Right. And for whatever you're trying to accomplish, like you can't pull back. Like, that, like sometimes you're like, well, my body's suffering, but I still need to go. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you still need to go. Yeah. And so that, coming in with this additional support is, seems to work really well.
You're such a scientist. Like, so crazy. God damn, Dr. Mike. So I'm like, how does time fly? What are some key takeaways that people should pay attention to, add, subtract in their life? Like, what are some kind of things that we should draw away from this conversation?
So that, sorry. No, it's okay. You're back. I'm a big believer that extra virgin olive oil should be the primary oil in your diet, because it's monounsaturated fats are good for your health, and it's loaded with antioxidants. You should be looking at, from a fruit and vegetable standpoint, try to have a salad every single day. And then looking to have berries, 4 to 5 days a week as part of your normal nutrition. And then the same thing with nuts and seeds. And if you can do that, you're going to be giving yourself, from a nutritional standpoint, a ton of anti-inflammatory support. Okay. And then we go, the other things that we talk about, exercise itself in the right dose bolsters your body's capacity, to fight inflammation and to fight oxidative stress, which is kind of like inflammation's cousin. So exercise is actually a key, despite it being short-term pro-inflammatory. Long-term, it's a huge benefit. So staying active every single day, so important.
Yeah. And I just feel like it ties into the conversations that we always wrap up with, the like, do what you can. You're never going to be perfect. Life is seasons. There's times when you're incredibly stressed. There's times when you're not getting any sleep. So take the things that you can do at that time. Like your diet always is something, well, not always, that you can manage. I knew there were people here. They're here to deliver my couch, and I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
But I feel like that is the thing about life, is you take what you can with the knowledge that you have, and you do the best that you can in those moments. And I think that's the information, the education that you always give us. And I so appreciate you. I kind of want, anybody that's been paying attention to this one or listens to it after, ask your questions below, because I think there's like a part 2 of this conversation
Totally.
that we can dig into a bit more. Just
Yep.
because, like, I think there's, yeah, like this one I feel like is just the tip of the iceberg on that. But I appreciate you. I'm sorry I have to get off early. To everybody
No,
who's
hey,
in,
you need someplace to sleep tonight. Go get your couch.
I do. But I appreciate you, and I definitely, like, anybody that's paying attention to this, ask us questions, and we'll just carry on with this conversation.
All right, that sounds great.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Happy
Bye.
Friday.
Yeah,
See
happy
ya.
Friday to you too.